So here we go. Another tale in our story from hell. In this video, I've promised you the story of the silver. So I've already mentioned that these pirates decided to take this treasure. I've mentioned a little bit about it. The treasure was substantial. A huge load of silver, big enough to pack a galleon with ingots. Ingots are like gold bars, but bigger. They're what countries make gold bars out of. Considered the most valuable prize by treasure hunters to this day. Ingots are worth millions, eh? The cargo on this ship, today's money, probably would have been worth billions. This is big money, enough for all of them to retire. Imagine it, the thought of all that treasure. The thought of Blackbeard being able to free his crew and allow them to retire in comfort and luxury instead of being hanged by the British for their crimes, which by this point were many. So they get together and they decide they're going to take this Spanish galleon filled with silver that they know is being transported. So they do. Only this story is another tale from hell. So now I tell you the story of the silver. See, the story of this silver goes back a full 1,000 years before the pirates took it. See, silver and gold, they're great, they last forever. You'd never know to look at the face of it how many years it's seen, or how many forms it's taken, how many times it's been remelted. So I'll show you my coin once again, as I tell you the story of the silver. I'll show it to you in better lighting this time, so that you can see for yourself what it is that they did with the silver, as I tell you the story of it. A simple thing, but with Roman writing on the outside. Some will tell you that it's Spanish, right up until they get it in their hand if they actually speak Spanish, and it's not. Some will tell you it's Latin, right up until they get it in their hand if they actually can read Latin, and they'll tell you it's not. In fact, in the old days, they transported dies separately. They still do to this day. The dies they use to print money, you need two sides, a heads and a tails, right? And so what they would do is transport these individually. That way, if you captured a ship, you only got one half, and you couldn't just start minting the country's currency that you robbed, because that could really destabilize their economy, not to mention get rid of the die. Now, when a king is presented with those dies, there's always more than one. There's usually 4 or 3, and they can choose. The one that is used, and then destroyed, so it's never used again. And the ones that were made that weren't used were kept, so that they could be used in the future if somebody wanted to. Well, this story isn't quite about the coin. See, we're not there just yet. This is the story of the silver, and it's a tale of magic. You bet. See, there once was a man who claimed that he could make silver magical be, that if it was pure enough, and I have to say that comes from Scripture. It says gold and silver is magical. And so this man, believing that, believed that if he could purify the silver enough, it would be a magical substance of incredible power. And so he promised the king that he could do this, being the greatest metallurgist in the country, at a time when Spain was pretty much the pinnacle of metallurgy. And so what he had done with his greatest metallurgist was tell him, "You've given me your word you can do this. If you fail, I'll execute you for it. Now go and keep your word." Apparently that's what he said. So this man put his best work into making this batch of silver, into making it as pure as he possibly could. Only he failed. It wasn't really any purer than any other silver of the day. And so he was executed, eh? Official record doesn't tell me how he was executed. But the story goes that the king himself pushed him into the vat of molten silver that he had created, and that his soul lies with the silver, that it's cursed. Only this curse is one of the few actual documented curses in human history, and it is on record with the Spanish to this day. See, this silver sat in one of their vaults for 1,000 years, literally. and you wonder why it sat for so long, I'll tell you the tale. And bang the gong. Because it's the truth. It's a terrifying tale. Truly it is. Put yourself in the king's position. And he's an ass. Put yourself in the position of this poor metallurgist, and imagine melting to death in a pool of your own silver. Created for a king you believed was in the right, was going to do the right thing. He didn't really believe he'd kill him for it, but he did. And so, normally when a big batch of silver is created and they intend on using it for minting coins, they store it in ingot form until they're ready, and then they turn it into gold bars or silver bars, or they make coinage out of it. In this case, it was going to be used to make coinage, which means they never turned it into silver bars. They left it as silver ingots, which means that the liquid metal was poured off into ingot molds, and those molds were then let to cool, and the result was this silver. Now, I've said that it sat there for 1,000 years, and you might find that truly unbelievable. Why would they just leave it sitting there in a Spanish vault for that long? But they did. And the reason they did is bloody unbelievable, and a story straight from hell. See, this man cursed this silver. So they said, those who were there, as he was being hurled into it and led over to it. He knew his fate all too well, and he knew he was going into hell, a molten pit of fire of his own making. And as he was led to it, he cried out a curse, that any who would touch this silver, that any who would set eyes on it, he would curse to madness, as their king was mad, and he truly was a madman. And shortly after that, he was thrown into the pool of molten metal for his death. It was apparently a slow and excruciatingly painful one, and he was heard to scream as he sunk into it. Brutally, I can only imagine. The poor man certainly died in hell. Well, they say his soul stayed with the silver and cursed all who set eyes upon it. Every night, as is the tradition to this day, they place 2 guards inside the vault and 2 guards outside. The reason is, of course, that the guards inside have the duty of stopping the guards outside from stealing the silver. The guards on the outside are to stop anybody from getting in, but they're also to stop the 2 guards inside from getting out should they attempt to steal the silver. And because there was only the one door in and out, and there were men inside, every morning it was opened. Now you might think these men would suffocate overnight, but it was a very large vault. It contained enough air for them to breathe, the 2 of them, without any trouble for the entire evening. It probably was ventilated so that they wouldn't suffocate, but that's one part of it. So these men, they have to guard this silver. And in the first morning, they open the vault only to find that one of them, stark raving mad, charges one of the guards, stabs him in the heart, kills him. The other guard stabs him and kills him, then looks inside for the other guard only to find him dead with his own sword, already been drawn out of its scabbard. The other guard's sword that they had just killed was through his heart. What he had done was go stark raving mad looking at the silver. You see, their backs were to the door. That was their position, staring at the silver. Well, that never changed. That's actually their job, to literally keep eyes on the silver all night long. That's the tradition. It didn't just happen one time. In fact, it happened again and again and again. And by the time they were ready to use the silver, fully 100 men had died this way. The king growing madder with each day. The men in the castle growing more terrified each day. Because every night, the story repeated itself. One of the guards inevitably inside the vault snapped, killed the other, and attempted to kill the other 2 in the morning when they opened it, because it wasn't openable from the inside, only from the outside. And so every morning, this ritual was repeated. And by the time 100 men had died, the king had decided not to use the silver, that it truly was cursed. He ordered the men to be silent about what had happened, about how he had killed this man, and the official recording is that he didn't kill him this way. that he hung him, I think, or beheaded him. But that's not the truth. Or the story of the curse wouldn't be real. And it is, and I can prove it. I know it for a fact. I've seen the evidence of it. The proof is here. And so, I'm going to light this smoke and tell you the rest of the tale of this silver. So at the end of 100 days, 100 times in a row, the exact same story unfolded itself. And as soon as they opened the vault, the man charged out, attempting to kill everybody there, failing and dying to the superior numbers of men there. Of course, he was mad, so it was not as hard to kill him, I suppose. But either way, they died. And most of the time, he managed to kill at least one of the other 2 guards, which meant that a lot of people died. 100 people died in actually a very short period of time. I guess about 40 days, 30 days, something like that. And so they didn't use this silver. In fact, they debated quite a bit what to do with it. Well, one day the king died, before he ordered anything to be done with the silver. And nobody knew what to do with it. They were terrified of it. Nobody wanted to guard it, but they had to. Eventually they stopped putting guards inside the vault because it was just too dangerous. And once they did, and nobody was allowed to see the silver, the curse stopped. So they thought. But I promised a tale of woe, a tale straight from hell. And this curse is one straight from hell. And it's only right in the end that it should fall into Blackbeard's hand. Another cursed man, betrayed by his crown, benefiting from the curse of another. How ironic. If you were a devious plotter, you couldn't have created something so brilliant in your mind. I certainly didn't. I just tell you the story. As I said, I'm not divine. It's not divine providence, it's just what I know. And so, the curse on the silver goes on. And over hundreds of years, this silver sat in a vault in Spain, and nobody would touch it. Nobody would go near it. After several hundred years, actually 1,000, nobody really believed in the curse anymore. And they decided to dispose of the silver, just in case. It had been ordered by this king that it never be used for any purpose. See, he had feared, because he knew the curse was real. He had seen the proof of it himself, and he was afraid that if this silver was ever turned into money, it would be in the hands of every citizen, and it would turn the whole country against itself and tear it apart. This country was, of course, Spain. There's a lot of people there, and they're decent people. It would have been a real shame to let this curse loose on them. And so he kept it secret. But in 1,000 years, nobody really knew. Until one fateful day, they ordered it disposed so they could clear the vault. They loaded the silver onto a ship, a treasure galleon. It just happened to be that these pirates heard about this treasure, heard that it was coming, and that they could rob it. Only when they got to it, they got a response they didn't expect. Usually Spanish treasure galleons are fought over to the death by their crews because they're navy, and they're trained to kill, and they're told that to do any less is treason. The Spanish were well known for being brutal fighters, and for being courageous. No cowards there. No, they were brave, hard men who fought hard and died hard. And so, when the pirates came upon this ship and it promptly surrendered to them, they were shocked. And when they boarded the ship and found it was loaded with silver, they were even more shocked that these men would unload this silver to them. The captain of the vessel urged them to take the silver immediately and told them an unbelievable story. It was in his diary. The unbelievable story, that is Blackbeard's diary, the parts I read. This unbelievable story went roughly like this. They say this silver is cursed. They've put it on my ship, and every night my men murder each other trying to steal it. We're on a skeleton crew now. Take it. before it kills us all. I'm lucky to get by with the ship I have and the crew I have, because we're not where we were supposed to dump the silver yet. We have orders to dispose of it. That's why we're surrendering it to you. We're supposed to dump it. We're not supposed to protect it. We're supposed to destroy it. The Crown is terrified of this curse, and they won't come near it. The guards don't want to be near it. I don't want it near me. I won't even lay eyes upon it because of the curse. So woe to you who take this. While it will come to you for free, it may in the end kill you. But what the hell? You're already a pirate, aren't you? He said something like that. And so they took the silver. A little turned on by what he said, in a way. Not excited sexually, but curious. Wondering what the hell he was talking about. Is this some bullshit story he made up so he didn't have to fight? Feeling like the pirates would just be too scared to take the silver? Well, if it did get told to them with that intent, it certainly wasn't going to work as far as they were concerned. They took the silver. And they brought it back with them to the Cayman Islands. So in the next story, I'll tell you about the striking of this coin, of the 8 coins of the pirate lords, and what the pirates later called pieces of 8 were very different from what the common people called pieces of 8 and still do. They were referring to these 8 pirate coins. See, the pirates decided, who cares anyway? You've heard this part. I'll tell you in the next video. Keith out.